Noon or good morning or good evening, wherever you're at. This is Dare to Think Out Loud. My name's LB Bork, host, and we got a bunch of panelists with us today also. Today is, I don't know, August 14th, I think, already? Where'd all the time go? Oh, it's the 18th. I'm sorry. No, it's the 14th. I'm still lost. Anyway. Lost half my screen here, so I'm a little off. But anyway, yeah, glad you could make it. This is Revolution Radio. We got a good topic today. We're going to talk about the chaos we're seeing. And I think John Brisson's going to be with us, but not till the bottom of the hour. But I do have Mike Gaddy and Scorpio Dave. Mike, why don't you say hello to the folks? Tell them how
Hi,
you're
guys.
doing and what you're up to.
How's everything going? I'm just enjoying life and watching all the insanity envelop around me, and was up very late last night researching source documents and coming up with some crazy info about those wonderful folks we call founders.
Founding frauders?
Well, you can call them that. I don't. Uh,
Okay.
because
Some of them
I,
are.
I'm not really happy with what they found. But anyway, because we're looking at it today in the streets, because as Lysander Spooner said, if the Constitution didn't authorize this stuff, it's sure as hell powerless to prevent it.
Yeah. Okay, Dave, what's up with you? How's the South life?
I'm doing all right. Just getting prepared for tomorrow's show. There's been a lot of, in my mind, I've been thinking a lot about this psychological operation that we're under, known as Operation Corona. And psychology has been totally weaponized against us, and they're using, fear and other psychological techniques to totally control our reality right now.
Well, it's been going on a long time. I guess we can get into that a little bit today. You were going to talk about a documentary on your program tomorrow?
Well, I'm going to go into this. It was a 4-part documentary series called Century of the Self. And I'm going to go into some aspects of that are more relevant than ever.
Sounds interesting. I have been looking into that stuff a little bit over the years, but I don't know. I've been chasing cats for the last 15. Haven't gotten much time to do a lot of research because, of course, my motivation is political and remedy and trying to get people to do something. I was just, based on what you were talking about, Dave, I was going into a little bit of a Noam Chomsky. Gnome. That's what I was having.
Gnome, like the little creature, a gnome.
Yeah, a little gnome. And, these people talk a lot, but they don't have any ideas to get things done, It seems like it's all entertainment. I don't know. I guess rounding up the cats is pretty hard work. Mike, what are you going to do for your program on Sunday evening? Do you have any ideas? Or is that up in the air yet? Didn't mean to put you on the spot or anything.
We are going to talk about. That's okay. We're going to talk about. Our subject will be a Bill of Rights, and I'm going to have two guests, and actually my wonderful producer Dave here. He's going to join in the conversation, and we're going to talk Bill of Rights thing that everybody thinks is going to protect us from, and we're going to find out if it will. Bill of Good had on with, I think this program we had him on one time. He's the health guru, and my good friend Robert Hudson from out in Reno, Nevada, and Robert offers some great insight being is the fact that he is of the black race. And so I think the program is going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, it sounds pretty diverse in topic and people. That's great. It's good to get everyone on board here because as far as I'm concerned, we pretty much only have one enemy, or adversary, as I call them, sometimes more so than not. Yeah, so yeah, we're going to talk about chaos today. Either one of you have a topic you want to bring up? I know it's kind of general what's going on is chaos. But, maybe there's a specific item one of you have. I really don't have any in particular. The destruction of the cities is an interesting one, but that's pretty deep. Maybe you're not even looking at that yourself, Mike. Maybe you try to ignore it.
Well, if you want to look at the cities, here's the states. Look, I see it all the time on social media. Well, look at all these cities that are run by Democrats, and look at how terrible they are. So let's send in federal forces, which is unconstitutional, unless requested by the governor or the but let's send in federal forces to straighten these people out. Well, my belief is what we should do is when you have an area that is controlled by the Marxists, let them finish their job. Let people see what the destruction of Marxism will bring to a city or a state, and just step back and let them commit suicide. I have no desire to rush in to try to help these people who have elected idiots to run their governments because they think they feel good. Step back. Let them. If you can't see the consequences of your actions, you'll never change. Let's watch some of these cities just completely destruct. I think Portland gave us a good example of what it would be like. But I don't agree with sending in federal forces to straighten them up. Let them destroy themselves.
Well, I agree. Dave, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I would agree with what Mike is saying, only I think I'd take it a little further. I think this has been engineered and done on purpose to destroy the system that we're currently under. And, I guess the topic is order out of chaos. And the greatest manifestation of that right now is like, oh, let's defund the police, and there's plenty of reasons to reform the police. There's a lot of big problems with the police as they currently are. But to say we don't need any police, well, that would be nice in a perfect world, but it's going to lead to some type of totalitarian response once things get far enough out of control.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I couldn't believe that get rid of the police thing. What are they thinking? I mean, I've been looking at a few things lately, and if you want to look at the progression of what these guys are doing, and I think I look at the Democrats as useful idiots. Like Mike mentioned, they're in there destroying themselves, and it doesn't make any sense of what they're doing. It's only making maybe the Republicans look better, and maybe that's what the goal of the shadow government is at this time. Remember, I call the deep state something that's kind of new, and it's kind of been there as far as the government goes, but the world, or the New World Order, has control over most governments in the world right now, and I call that the shadow government. But the deep state would be, the CIA and things of that nature, which are definitely not in control of the world, but they do manipulate. It's part of probably the shadow government. But if you look back at the year 2000, they installed police state into Black's Law Dictionary. Not that it's anything new, but for American law, as Black's Law Dictionary represents, it wasn't in there. And that kind of told me that this century was going to start out that way. And that's kind of what we're saying. But if you go back to, municipal law, generally every municipality has a police force. And that would make the state becoming a more, overt, totalitarian type, maybe police state is what I'm seeing. And of course, if you had the cities, their municipalities, their own corporate body, getting rid of their police force, especially in this day and age, that's insane.
I have an opposing viewpoint.
Okay.
I believe that any police force that is enforcing the unconstitutional edicts of any governing body is a threat to freedom and liberty as opposed to any type of protection from danger.
Oh, I totally agree with that, Mike. Absolutely. And, what they've been doing too is creating, several generations of young people who were indoctrinated into essentially a Marxist kind of system, and they've been inculcated to hate themselves and the way we live. And so violence and conflict are inevitable, and it's being used as a weapon right now and as part of a greater plan.
Well, one of the other things, Dave, that troubles me, and I actually was involved in uncovering some of this for a while, but one thing that came about was I supported this really decent man for sheriff back in Colorado back in 16, and he had retired as a detective from San Bernardino area in California, and he had moved to Colorado. Very good man, very decent, and so we decided that we would support him for sheriff. Well, when he decided to run for sheriff, he found out that his certification as a law enforcement officer had actually, whatever you call it, expired. I don't know how that happens, but I guess they got regulations on that. So he was required to go back to the law enforcement academy to recertify. So he decided, rather than, if he was elected, to put that financial burden on the people of the county, he stepped up, invested his own money, and went to the police academy. Well, about 3 to 4 weeks into that, I think it was a 10-week session, about 3 to 4 weeks, he called a couple of us who supported him running for sheriff. And he said, I need to talk to you guys. So we met at a local restaurant, and we're sitting there, and Mike says, guys, I'm not sure I can do this anymore. And we said, why? What's going on? He said, well, I've got 20 plus years experience on the mean streets of California. And he said, I can tell you right now that from this police academy that I am attending, they are not training cops anymore. They're training assassins. And he said, everyone, they're teaching in these law enforcement academies that everyone that you come in contact with is a perp or a potential perp. They're not treated as citizens anymore. And that they're also teaching not to de-escalate violence, but to escalate violence, to keep pushing until you get a reaction that you can immediately apprehend the subject for, resisting arrest or whatever. So he said it has become a confrontational force, and he said, I can't go along with that. And so then we started doing some research, and I started talking with some friends who were at the federal level, and they told me that after 9/11, that basically what happened to law enforcement training in America, that it was decided to go by the Mossad model for training law enforcement, and that law enforcement would be trained to treat the people of the country as the Israelis treat the Palestinians. And if you look at all the cities, Albuquerque's a great one. You look at some of the others where the police got so bad, they had to, the government had to rein them in. There were 16 or 17 people shot in Albuquerque back 6, 7 years ago. A homeless man was shot. It was getting incredible, the number of people who were being killed by cops. And I think that justifies exactly what we were told, is that after 9/11, our law enforcement training went to a Mossad directed, I don't mean physically they're there, but at least in theory, a Mossad method of, because I don't remember prior to 9/11, guys, us having all of these, 5 or 6 guys arresting one guy for selling a cigarette. Some of this stuff has gotten ridiculous. And, Jack Yantis in Idaho, cops called him out. He was a rancher, and they called him out to come out, and because one of his bulls had gotten loose and had been hit by a car, and they called him out. They had tried to put the bull down with their 9mm, and it didn't work. So they called him. He comes out with his rifle to put his own animal down, and somewhere in the fracas, the police end up shooting him and killing him. There are websites now that show the violence of police has escalated tremendously. And for those of you who aren't really into this, I promise you the police have killed many more white people than they've killed blacks. And it's just being distorted by the media.
Absolutely, Mike. That's very interesting, the story you told. And just think that this kind of training that is contrary to a good society is being applied to so many different professions: the medical profession, the legal profession, and law enforcement. And the other thing is that law enforcement has become sort of like as the system has become increasingly profitized and privatized, the police are sort of there to bring in new customers to the private prisons. And the other thing I've noticed is that the police have begun to create their own subcultures. So like you said, they see Americans, the citizens, as the enemy or somebody else, not part of themselves. And they are using Israeli trainers to train the police. This has been going on for a long time. And the most recent thing I've been learning about the police is the corruption has gotten so bad, they've actually started creating their own gangs within the police, sort of like secret societies within the police departments. Los Angeles has particularly a big problem with that right now.
How do you think that got started, Dave? Or why did it get started?
The gangs?
Yeah.
Well, I think it goes into it. I think the genesis of it was what Mike was saying, is that they've trained the police to think that the people are apart from them. They aren't part of the people, and the police have created their own subculture because of that. And then a logical extension of a private subculture are the formation of secret societies, and that goes along with the corruption that's within the police as well. So it's all part of a natural progression that they've sent the police on for the last 20 years or so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it gets down to the way America's been brought up. It's been run by secret societies for over 200 years. So I guess this is just another extension of it, perhaps. The last 40 years, we've seen a big digression in community based on what these people are doing. So yeah. I think it's going to continue unless people put an end to it.
Well, I think Mike made a really good point too about the police becoming assassins. That's essentially what many of them see their role as. And, just because someone runs from the police, it doesn't mean the police have the right to shoot the guy in the back and kill him.
Right.
I mean,
No, it's gotten bad. But as we've noted, I think it's definitely an agenda to cause chaos in the American culture. And I don't know, what do you think they're up to, Dave? I know Mike and I probably have our ideas, but what did they expect to gather or garner out of this?
Well,
chaos.
we're tyranny. they're planning on unveiling this new system. This global reset is coming. There's no stopping it unless people really start to get wise as to what's going on. And I think really the end game is, I think they actually want to get rid of these local police departments entirely, federalize the police under one umbrella of control. And I think that's what we're going to see here very soon. Either that, or we're going to have absolute open martial law with the use of United Nations troops. I don't know if that's possible, but on the Red Pill Roundtable, Maggie Rose, who was, a woman that was career military, she got an email from a friend of hers, and she read it on air the other day, and essentially that they're training enormous amounts of foreign UN troops right now. And our troops are being forced to do that, according to her contact. Maybe Mike has a comment on the possibility of that, or if he thinks that's accurate.
Go ahead, Mike. He's in Netherlands.
I think very possibly that is a plan, because the thing we know is if we look at New Orleans during Katrina 2005, they were ordered to seize the guns. There's videos of the chief of police saying, "We're going to take the guns." So they even seized guns in areas that weren't hit by the flood or damaged by that burst. They went throughout the town seizing firearms. Well, the one thing they found out, there was and the military who refused to protect. I think, they do these test balloons from time to time, or they look at things as test data. And I'm sure they looked at that, and then they decided, okay, well, all right, if we have some police decide.
Uh-oh.
They're not going to enforce.
Mike's having problems with his connection. Can you hear him, Dave? I can't.
Draconian rules and laws. We need someone to step in, and they started asking questions.
Mike, you're drifting. I don't know if you can hear me. Geez, I thought you had that all lined up and fixed. Oh, well. Yeah, we can't hear you at all right now. Maybe it's possible you can reconnect.
So did I.
It's funny, Dave's
as soon as it starts getting good,
yeah,
they start messing with Mike. This is what happens usually. It's right when it starts to get really interesting and onto an important point that, internet connections.
Yeah. So you think there's some conspiracy going on?
No, of course not.
No, I'm thinking your connection's a lot better and you're down south.
Well, it's weird. My internet cut off several times when my show was about to start. And that actually happened during the Red Pill Roundtable on Wednesday. As soon as the show got going, my internet went down for like 10 minutes. And, that doesn't happen regularly here. So it's just interesting timing, if nothing else.
Yes.
Mike, are you back on? How's it going now?
I don't know if he's trying to reconnect. Probably should have done it.
Well, I don't know.
Go
wait,
ahead.
here he is.
Hello.
Oh yeah,
You're
good.
there.
You sound good now, Mike.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, Mike, I was particularly interested in what you thought about this concept that
my friends from the alphabet agency probably cut me off.
Oh. Well,
No,
Mike, I was
happen.
interested to get your point of view on this notion that they could possibly use United Nations troops to enforce, this the unveiling of this new system. I've it's been sort of a part of conspiracy lore since the Bill Cooper days, and I've sort of vacillated myself on whether or not that's a doable thing for many reasons. What's your thinking on that aspect of the conspiracy?
That was directed at you, I believe, Mike. Did we lose
Are you
you
hearing
again?
me okay?
Yeah. Yep.
Hello?
Sounds good. Yeah. You're okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Can you
you're a
hear
little
me?
choppy. You're choppy. But we can hear you.
Go ahead, Mike. Give it a try.
Got a break in a couple minutes.
Can you hear me
Mike.
now? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're fine.
They don't want Mike talking about United
Okay.
Nations troops on the streets of
You
America.
can hear me.
Well, there's the break.
Well, imagine
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Just in time, man. This is Dare to Think Out Loud. It is the August 14th edition. Got a station break or two. Be back in a few minutes. Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
We did not engage in conflict that was out of line with our mission.
Is it disloyalty? Is it sedition? Is it treason to oppose the hands of tyranny? Never!
I will never send troops anywhere on a mission of that kind without telling them that if somebody shoots at them, they can darn well shoot back.
I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty! Oh, give me death!
A dark cloud is finally lifting across the world as U.S. military intelligence and their global partners are destroying the deep state criminal power structure that has ruled over our planet for hundreds of years.
We are free with the God-given right, and we shall not yield that right to any power on earth.
Hi, I'm Scott McKay. The world is at, and I am your host on The Tipping Point on Revolution Radio, where every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we bring you the latest in this ensuing takedown of this global criminal empire.
That's an image of strength.
You'll get the raw, hard truth here on The Tipping Point. So come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in Studio B at revolution.radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
I want to thank everybody for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the one place where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio.
All right, let's show them what we got here.
All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Well, we're back. This is Dare to Think Out Loud, second segment or the second quarter of our 2-hour program today. Hope everyone's doing wonderful. I would like to thank the people at Revolution Radio for letting us appear. And to do that, it is a voluntary station. We ask that you help us out. And if you could, go to the website at freedomslips.com or revolution.radio and hit that donations button at the top. We'd really appreciate it. And I'm sure the management would too. And thank you for all the hard work you guys do. Things will be getting better here. I think they got the archives up. I don't know the particulars on that. Maybe Dave does. Dave, do you know anything about that?
About what exactly?
The archives.
Well, it's they are free, I believe, through the end of this month.
Correct. That's what I've heard. I just don't know the address for them offhand here. It's probably somewhere, but I've been working on a new project, so I've been kind of out of touch with outside reality. Anyway, yeah. Speaking of being out of touch, I had a little trouble last hour, or the last segment rather, because my Skype went full screen and it's really freaking me out. I can't get to my other things on my desktop, even though I have 5 screens. It's really dominating my main screen that I have all the icons and stuff on. It's confusing me and it's making me unhappy, but we'll get through this. So anyway, we're talking about chaos today and what chaos we're seeing not only around the world, but especially the United States. It's gotten pretty ridiculous. We hit upon police forces and things last hour. We touched on politics a bit. I don't know if anyone wants to bring up anything in regard to that. I don't know, Biden's running mate. That was kind of weird. Speaking of chaos.
Well, I was before we
ahead,
move
Dave.
on, if we could possibly just get Mike's input on this concept of United Nations troops being sent
sorry,
on
I
the
took
streets
us
of
off
America
topic.
to prevent chaos.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We should finish that. Mike, are you there? Are you working?
Well, I
Meaning
hope
your
I am.
connection. Well, your connection sounds a little better at this point. Go ahead.
I doubt it's going to sound good because I tell you what, Dave kind of touched on it, and there was a time when I thought that all of this cutting out when I was on was coincidental, and it's happened too many times for me to call it coincidence anymore. Dave, I believe it happened one time when I was on your show, and it has happened repeatedly. So,
Yes, it did.
So and it always is interesting, the subject matter when it cuts out.
Yeah, I know they mess with it. I was on a program a few years ago, and they just shut it down like 5 times in a row. The Skype, they took us out. Caravan to Midnight was the program I was on. It's pretty
Well,
pretty
Mike, you're not
disturbing.
implying that United Nations troops on the streets of America is somehow a touchy subject, are you?
Well, no, I don't think so. But I think, what I was beginning to delve into was the fact that it's documented that in the recent past, for over a decade, that in basic training, the trainees are being asked if they would move against Americans on the streets of the country. And it's always included in one of their psychological profiles. So if we think that is just for fun and games, we're nuts. And I have no doubt that they would bring in a heartbeat United Nations troops, but it won't be under the pretext of keeping Americans in line. They will bring troops in under some false dichotomy and claim that they had to be used for some emergency to the benefit of the people. That's the way government operates. Government operates on a lie. If they told the truth, nobody would want government.
They've been talking about this UN thing for as long as I've been in the movement. Back in the 90s, Jack McLam, of course, brought it up. Several other people have. I was at White Sands back in the 90s, and they actually had Russian MiGs and things there stationed. And so there's a lot of collaboration that goes on with, the different nations. And I wonder how deep it gets,
Think about Fort Benning, Georgia, and the School of the Americas. Think about that. That was used to train people to overthrow governments in Central America and South America. And a lot of people don't know that the very core of MS-13 are the relatives of the people that we took out in Central and South America in the 80s. And then we have, we also, I know that at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, there was a time prior to 9/11 that they were training Arab people from United Arab Emirates and from other places. We were training pilots for whatever missions that they were to be used for. So the fact that the American military trains foreign troops is not a new subject.
Right. Hey, John, do you have anything to add to this discussion?
Hey, everybody. Yeah,
Hey,
I just, hey, like, how you doing? Hope you're doing well too, Dave. I mean, we've all been heard about UN troops, through conspiracy, talk radio and books and everything for years. Like, it's something that's likely going to eventually happen, just like some sort of like internment camp. But again, is it just something that's put out into the narrative for us always to be constantly on guard, and then eventually let our guard down because it's been 10 or 30 years and it hasn't happened yet? Or is it something that may never happen? I really don't know. I can see it happening, don't get me wrong, but it's like I can see FEMA camps and internment camps happening as well. But it's almost like there's a fear aspect to it too, that maybe they put out there and it never does come to fruition, right? Like if they're always telling us, talking about FEMA camps and building up hype about them, or about the UN soldiers, coming over here and I mean, you could say, well, now more than ever because of the riots and protests, right? That would happen, and I could definitely see that. I mean, the things that have happened this year have definitely accelerated and changed some things. Where if it was like a year beforehand, I'd be like, maybe it's going to happen, maybe it's not. But I don't know. I mean, do you guys kind of see it that way too? That it could be used as a fear tactic to get people riled up and angry or fearful?
I'm
or I'm off base on that.
No, I totally agree with that, John. That's a very interesting perception there, and it's something I've thought about myself. Because in some ways, putting United Nations troops on the streets, they're just going to be like a lightning rod for hatred, because there are foreign soldiers on the streets essentially, and that's not going to go over well. But I did have a thought: what if they do a national police force and recruit foreign nationals to be part of this police force, and even recruit former UN soldiers to be on this national police force? That's kind of a 2-in-1 right there.
Well, I have a question for you, Dave.
Okay.
All right. We know, and I saw it on social media, when Trump unconstitutionally sent federal forces into Portland. There were the Trump apologists all over Facebook and everywhere else saying, well, even if it is unconstitutional, it needs to be done. how far a stretch is it that if Trump told the people with his followers that, hey, we need to use some UN troops in whatever city or state, we need to use them because our federal forces are busy doing something else. Do you think that the Trump idolaters would say that's okay?
Oh, I do think that, and but Mike, you have to learn how to play 5D chess because that's what's going on here. That's always the excuse they use, when there's something that doesn't seem quite right about what's going on. Oh, well, he's playing 5D chess, and you just don't see his grand strategy. And also, you talked about bringing these troops on to, protect federal property. I think you can make the argument that just about anything is federal property in a major city if you wanted to use, loose guidelines.
Not constitutionally. There is an article in the Constitution that defines what property the federal government can own. And I promise you, the majority of property that the federal government owns is unconstitutional.
Oh, I agree with that completely. All the more reason why they could just sort of expand the definition of it. And, once you I guess my point is, once you open the door to that kind of thinking, it's easy to spread it out to anywhere you want it to go.
Well, guys, let's go back 70 years. And let's think about a comment from a president of the United States by the name of Harry S. Truman. And when he was asked about the constitutionality of sending troops to Korea without a declaration of war, Harry Truman said, the Constitution does not give me the authority to send troops to Korea, but the United Nations does. So if a president is going to avoid the Constitution 70 years ago and use the UN, are we somewhat naive to believe it wouldn't be done again? Even if they're used here instead of someplace else?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that is a great point, Mike.
And John, to your point, which is very well taken, having been involved in planning of what is commonly called PSYOPs, having looked at those, although it was, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 years ago, having seen that, one of the things you do in a PSYOP, in a large PSYOP, is it starts decades before the intended actual occurrence of what you want to do. And you start out by conditioning the minds of people. If you put in a person's mind that the UN troops may come to America, the seed has been planted. Now, whether they accept it or don't accept it, or whether they reject it and say, oh, that will never happen, the fact is you have planted that seed in the minds of the people. So the people's mind has considered it. So it is not a new thing. In a PSYOP, the thing you don't want to do is to bring in something that people just totally don't expect. So you condition the mind to accept certain things. And what we used to refer to as, hey, let's run this up the flagpole and see who salutes. And what you do in a PSYOP is you do a preliminary test on a populace to see how they react to certain stimuli. And then you keep that in your record for future maneuver. But the point of it is that once you have people accepting a theory or accepting a possibility, then they have embraced it mentally, and it is not a shock to the mind when it happens.
That is a fascinating, Mike, and that's very interesting. I've been kind of researching into this psychological control of society, the ever-increasing use of psychology to do that. From your experience inside, what role did psychologists play in this sort of the planning and formation of these kind of operations?
Mike, are you there?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, really.
Wow.
Okay,
That's some
that's
interesting
weird.
timing.
Mike?
Eddie, you there, Mike?
Can you hear me now?
Now you're choppy. Yeah, it was interesting. He was clear for when he said what he said, then he
Can you hear me?
goes out a little
Hello?
Yeah, we can.
I've always
Go
been
ahead.
choppy.
You're out again.
Wow.
Anyway, I
well,
was
that looks
gonna
like
say-
that's a question
How
that
is it
they
now?
don't want
How is it
answered
now?
right there.
Hello?
Yeah,
Oh,
Try-
isn't that interesting?
yeah, it is interesting. Try speaking now. Now,
Can
let
you
me
hear me
add
now?
that. Yeah. Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead and give it a shot, Mike. We can hear you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Here is the thing: is that the CIA started operating many years ago in major colleges and universities, especially on the psychological aspect. I mean, look at MK Ultra, and we've all heard of that. We all know what went on with that, and we do know that when Congress got wind of MK Ultra and told the CIA to bring in all their files, they just destroyed them all and failed to present them to Congress. And ironically, no one was held in contempt of Congress for doing that. And I think that is very telling in itself. Of course, at that time, J. Edgar Hoover had the dirt on every member of Congress, and he could control how they voted anyways. So logically, that is huge. And there's been all kind of mind control efforts that have gone on both in the CIA and the FBI. And of course, the DIA and NSA and DARPA especially has worked on mind control for quite some time. DARPA now says that they have helmets that they can put on the common soldier and control their brainwaves. They've advertised that. It's public. So for us to think that they haven't operated, because once you control the mind, you control the body. And so there would be much more emphasis put on mind control than anything else. And hey, let's look at DARPA. Where's DARPA located? Anybody know?
It's in
No, I
Virginia,
don't
isn't
actually.
it? Or Massachusetts or Virginia.
Well, DARPA is located at Virginia Tech.
Virginia
And
Tech. Okay.
let's look at, has there ever been a mass shooting at Virginia Tech? Can anybody remember one happening?
Yes, there has. Yes, there has. Yes, there has.
Okay, then let's ask another question. Has there ever been a mass shooting at Fort Hood, Texas?
Yes, there has.
Okay, and the perpetrator of that event at Fort Hood, Texas, had just transferred from what facility?
I don't know.
DARPA.
That's it. Oh, that's wow. Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
At Virginia Tech, he had just transferred where he had been involved in an operation at DARPA, which was called the Warrior Reset Program, to where they were working on trying to take over veterans' minds to prevent PTSD. Now that was the precept which America would accept. But what else were they trying to do? Because here, Major Hassan goes to Fort Hood, and within a very short time, just walks in and starts shooting people. So yes, I think there is the mind control is the real key. And John, you really touched on it there with bringing out the certain aspects and how you work on mind control, how you control the mind. And the way to control the mind is to get the mind in conflict. If you can get the mind that knows that it's useless to wear a mask, but they wear a mask anyway, you have established mind control.
Yeah, back to what you said about them setting things up. beforehand, as I mentioned recently in the past, that all these movies they came out with in the last 50, 40 years for sure about viruses attacking the United States. That was the mental programming you were talking about, right, Mike?
Well, that is true, and they do it in mainstream TV, almost on programs. I can sit and watch an episode of NCIS, and I can point out 3 or 4 mind control elements that are brought across those broadcasts. And I was told at one time that there are CIA operatives that sit in every major studio to make sure that the proper mind control or mind stimulating aspects are put into. They came out with the cops series to make people understand, to condition people for cops going in and beating the hell out of people.
Yeah. Yeah, my eldest uncle, who was in the underwater demolition team in Korea, he later went on into academics in psychology, and he told me that every major university has at least one CIA operative in every major department in that university.
Well, that's true. That is very true, especially as you alluded to, Dave, especially in any areas of psychology or any mind work. And I think it was I don't know how many of you have ever read the book Transformation of America, but that lady who wrote that book is very knowledgeable, and
Kathy O'Brien.
Yeah. And she mentioned that if there was 2 things they taught at VMI, I mean, not VMI, but Virginia Tech, the 2 things they taught were engineering and mind control.
Yes, and Mike, that's a very fascinating book. And one thing she brings up about that there was 2 different factions within sort of the mind control people. One faction wanted to focus on trauma-based mind control, using trauma to control people's mind, and the other faction wanted to focus on technology to control people's mind. I always thought that was interesting.
Well, and they're hard at work on both of them, because if you want to talk about the chaos theory, and here, Dave, are you familiar with? He's passed away now, but a law professor in Southern California, of all places, by the name of Butler Schaefer.
No.
Okay. He wrote a fantastic book, and I can send you it in PDF form if you don't want to order it. But it is called Calculated Chaos: Institutional Threats to Peace. And that is a fantastic read. Let's at some point in time, let's get into that either on this show or on my show or your show, Dave.
Oh, that'd be great. That sounds very interesting. What could you give us sort of just a preview of what his premise is or was?
Well, he goes into it in such detail in so many places. I mean, he touches on so many things that we have with this institutional threat to peace and human survival. And it's calculated chaos. Again, I know I'm being redundant, but it's designed. This whole COVID-19 is designed for an ulterior purpose, and that is the complete control of this society. And that, again, is part of what I guess the best way to say this, Dave, is to read the book, and he goes step by step by step by step by step, incident after incident after incident that has been perpetrated by government to lead people to where we are today, to where an intelligent person will actually put their own health on the line because they've been scared by government.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
John, do you have anything before the break? We got about 2 minutes.
John something's happened to him on the call. I'm trying to call him back. He's not showing that he's actually on the call right now. So maybe we can get him back on after the top of the hour break. But this is a very profound discussion about the use of mind control. And as Mike just touched upon, this is probably, or most certainly, the biggest mind control operation ever attempted in modern history.
Well, I think without a doubt, Dave, and let's look back to where we first became interested in this was after we returned a few POWs from Korea. Of course, we left about 8,000 in the hands of the communists. But when we look at the POWs that were returned from Korea, and they started talking about mind control in the early 1950s, about the mind control tests that were being perpetrated on them in captivity. And we know that the Vietnamese did the same thing. And so this was brought about MK Ultra because America decided, hey, we've got to know how to use these tools as well.
Right.
Well, there's the break. This is Dare to Think Out Loud. Today is August 14th. We'll be back for the second hour after these station announcements.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
I will defend myself against their tyranny. Number 3 is my radio broadcast. I'm squarely in front of the public all the time, and they all know what's going on.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on human beings for expanding its sphere of influence.
Hello, my name is John Wayne, and I do a broadcast here at freedomslips.com, revolution.radio, called The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
Freedom and fear are at war.
And folks, I assure you, we are in Defense Condition 1, as we journey perilously through this paradigm that we currently reside in. And I ask that you join me every Saturday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
We shall never surrender.
Anarcho-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes. But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting. Yes, I see. By a simple majority in the case of purely internal affairs. Be quiet. But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more... Be quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look. It's just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible. You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live, Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us. Here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio! Thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
Well, we're back. This is Dare to Think Out Loud. Thanks for joining us. This is hour 2 of today's program. Anyway, we're talking about chaos in the world today, especially in the United States. I think we do have listeners from all over the world. So anyway, we have Mike Gaddy with us, John Brisson, and my name's LB Bork, and of course, Dave Scorpio, or something to that effect. Yeah, sorry about last hour. We had some transmission problems with Mike. I don't know. Hopefully he's got that worked out. I know he's been working on it. Anyway, to continue, Dave, do you think we've covered that, or do you want to stay on that topic? Or?
Well, John, do you have anything to add to what we're finishing up with the last hour on? You kind of dropped off the call, and I wanted to see what you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my internet. I had to reset my router. It was weird. I'm having problems too myself. No, I mean, for everything I've said, everything I heard, with all the points that were given, it's very difficult to understand what is psychological warfare or psychological operation on us. Information that's being put out of whether or not it's true or not is very difficult to discern. Like, is it possible that UN troops may appear on the streets? Yeah, of course, but pretty much if it happens, what can we do? I guess the only thing that you can do is just make sure that you're armed. You're preparing for your Second Amendment. Preparing for your second. You're enjoying your Second Amendment rights and practicing shooting and just getting ready just in case war or something ever breaks out. So that's all that we can do. There's not really much other than spreading awareness. If it happens, even though there are videos that you'll see where they'll show like a whole bunch of tanks on a train, but the video is like years and years old, right? And they're like, see, they're moving them. You saw that a lot with what was happening with the protests and the riots and the coronavirus and everything. So you got to be very careful when you see stuff like that, because it could be old things being pushed through mimetic warfare on the internet to make you think it's currently happening. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. I'm not going to say that I don't fall for this stuff. We all have a certain amount of cognitive dissonance and cognitive bias, but you got to do our best to try not to. So.
Yeah, the car carriers for the railroad were posed or put out there on the internet as concentration camp transfer cars. And no one ever had anything valid on it. It was just all scare tactics. So getting back to what these people might do in regard to just scaring us to keep us from doing anything or whatever the case may be, it's pretty deep. But my question is, what's it all about? I mean, we can see the world only interested in making money, and the Zionist faction is interested in the new economy. I've heard that coming out of their mouths. So the point is, what are they going to do? Keep us in the cages in the future, or just have us be, the perfect consumers? What's this all about?
Well, LB, I'll start off just briefly.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think that they plan on reopening the economy as we knew it, period. We're seeing a lot of false starts like, oh, we're going to get football going. Yeah, all right, football season's going to start. Like, oh, well, gee, no, we can't do it now. Sorry, we're going to do it, but we can't. It's too dangerous. I think we're going to see a lot of false starts like that to give the general public false hope. And I don't think they have any intention of reopening this. They're going to bring things to a virtual standstill, and they have to do that. If you look at it from the point of view of the conspirators, they've got to bring this economy as we know it to a screeching halt before they can unveil the new system. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, that's my point. What's the new system?
Well, the new system is going to be a technocratic one, and I think it's going to be a hybrid one of technocracy, communism, fascism, whatever you want to call it. But it's going to be government control over just about every aspect of our lives, and I think that's what they're shooting for. Let's see what John and Mike think there.
I think they are shooting for that, Dave. I just don't know if they're ever going to reach that. I just don't, I don't know. I mean, I guess now more than ever, right? We've been talking about, you know, totalitarianism coming completely down on the necks of every American citizen, or at least, majority of us, not the elite per se. But I just don't, yeah, I don't know. I remember when I was first, wet behind the ears, learning about conspiracies back in 2008, when I woke up and I was, Alex Jones would go on the radio and say like any day now, and it kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier with the UN, uh, troops in the FEMA camps, it's likely that the economy is going to crash, right? That we're going to go into some sort of Great Depression. Maybe there'll be some sort of economic reset. They've been hinted at that, but they've been hinting at that for years. I always thought that we wouldn't even get this far, or even get to the far point where there is camps or where there is UN soldiers or whatever, because there is a certain. I always thought that they would, soft kill us with wars and with population control to like vaccines and food, and, poisoning our foods and our water. But it would never get really to that point where they were going to fulfill the Georgia Guidestones and kill off 98 or 99% of the population, just because there's a certain amount of power of keeping us where we are. There's a certain amount of economic power. There's a certain amount of power that they can lord over us, and yeah, maybe we would definitely lost, people, and population control is a real thing. Don't get me wrong, but I never thought it would be the end game. At least the way that it's been foretold in conspiracy culture. I know as a Christian, the Book of Revelation, however, there is an end game, and I understand that. I didn't think, I guess maybe I would see it in my lifetime. But I don't know, we'll see. What do you guys think?
Like I stated, it's all about the money. I believe it's not about control, really. Of course, control makes the money, but that's what I believe. I believe it's the Zionist factions' goal to put all the profits into their hands.
Well, I agree with that,
let anyone else do it.
Of the oligarchy right now, by forcing small businesses to close down. But at a higher level, it really can't be about the money. When you have the ability to print money, the game is no longer making money. Their money is just a tool to enact the system that they want to bring into place. What do you think about that?
Like I said, what's their goal? To put us all in cages and look at us like we're zoo animals? What good is anyone to them? Are we going to shine their shoes and make their breakfast for them? What's the purpose?
Well, let's get Mike's take on this. If he can make it through.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, you're coming in now.
Okay. Well, here is the point. Let's go back, and so much of this will take us right back to what we call the founding fathers. You have James Madison, who said basically that the people were too dumb to think for themselves, and that basically they should be, allowed to participate in government only to the point that they were subordinately useful. So basically, I think that is the same thing. And Robert Morris, who was the first financier who was actually a dictator during the Revolutionary War, he controlled everything and insisted that he control everything. And he told the Congress that the money needs to be centered into the wealthy aristocracy because the other folks just weren't smart enough to handle their own affairs. This is not a new concept. It's not a new idea. This is something that's been into the minds of what we call the wealthy and the well-born for the entire existence of America. It's always been there. It was just, how do we accomplish this? And the rapid birth rate in this country kind of threw them all off kilter, because we were looking at 9 million people in 1787. And we've got 200 million plus besides that now, and the people are consuming too many of the resources. There has to be a population decrease, and they've openly said that on several occasions. And so basically, they're going to start off first with the people that they consider who take from society and are no longer contributing to society. So once you're no longer contributing, you are a leech on the society, and you need to be eliminated. And I believe that is one of their purposes of the vaccination program. And you're going to at some time get to where, hey, if John Smith over there has finally reached the age to where he really can't contribute to our well-being anymore, we'll just there's something we can give him, and he will be no longer a burden to society. This has been a common plan of the wealthy for so long, and that is one of the reasons that the wealthy always seek to control government. Because a billionaire, you look at the billionaires, Bloomberg, Trump, the rest of them, they don't really care what kind of government you have. It doesn't make any difference whether it's socialism, Marxism, democracy. It doesn't make any difference, because they're going to be in control of it regardless. So, the thing that they don't want, and the government that they do want, is the one that limits anything that limits their activity. So it's really a simple complex. And, I'm going to jump ship here for a second, guys, but I was thinking back to that mind control thing and thinking about, are you guys familiar with the story of James Forrestal?
No, I'm not personally.
Oh, yes. That's fascinating.
Forrestal, what did Forrestal tell Truman? He was the first Secretary of Defense. And he told Truman that there were certain things that had to be stopped. And number one, he thought the Department of Defense, and he was the first secretary, he thought the Department of Defense was all too powerful for a free society. And he wanted that cut back. He wanted the power of the Department of Defense cut back. And then the other thing he wanted strong moves against adopting the concept of the Soviet Union and their government. And number three was he fought against the creation of the State of Israel. So after he comes out with his philosophy, he suddenly becomes depressed and is taken to Walter Reed Hospital, where he jumps out of a 16-story window. So these things, they have moved in these efforts. And I know so many people out there, when you start talking about this stuff, and I know, John, you've experienced it. Dave, I know you've experienced it. LB as well. When you start talking about anything that doesn't fit comfortably into the mind of Bubus Americanus, you have become a conspiracy theorist of the highest degree.
That's
yeah.
true.
Yeah, you can hit some real anger walls if you say the wrong thing and trigger people, let's say.
Yeah, John, you have a podcast that's pretty well listened to. What do you think about people's attitudes? Of course, our audience, or the people that listen to us, are going to be a little more in tune with things, but I'm sure you hear about some stories in regard to what the average people think. What I've heard recently, sorry, I'll let you talk after I get this out. I've heard recently myself that Americans are waking up now. What have you heard in that respect, John?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I guess we'll see. It really depends. I mean, there has been I guess you could say an awakening of sorts. People have had more time on their hands. They've been, upset that they lost their job. They're Googling things on the internet. They're talking to their neighbors and with their neighbors more often. That was one of the things, I guess, maybe the elite may or may not have, ran through their models as far as the lockdowns and everything's been going on with the coronavirus. So yeah, I mean, there is, but then again, they're getting funneled too, a lot of them, into believing in QAnon and trusting the plan and trusting Trump. And so they're getting funneled, they're waking, but they're getting funneled in that trap, just like it was with Zeitgeist 2 years ago, where people were being awakened that 9/11 was an inside job through that movie, but then getting funneled into a new age trap. So you see that quite frequently,
So there might be a little hope then of people waking up. Well, I just say we've got to keep on plugging, right?
Well, and I just wanted to touch on something John said that is interesting about the a new age trap. I've noticed a lot of people that are indoctrinated into new age philosophy. They're thinking on this coronavirus thing as well. This is something wonderful, and it's going to make humanity more wonderful, and we're going to a higher place with this. And yep, that. They don't, they don't seem to have any trepidation about what's going on. They just think that we're heading into a new age, and this is just part of it.
Yeah, that's strange. Like Earth is going to change.
Hey guys, can I throw out a theory?
No. Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
All right.
Go ahead.
I'm going to give you a theory, and you guys shoot holes in it, please. Okay, I am the deep state, the secret society. I'm whoever it is, the international bankers. I'm whoever it is, and I know that this economy is going to collapse, and I know it's going to fall around down everything else. It's 2016. And I'm looking forward to what's going to happen. And I know that we cannot endure another 2008 to 2010 and stay normal. So we have to have something that happens. So I have this plan in mind. So I make sure, being the puppeteer, I make sure that Donald Trump is elected president. And he's going to create a group of fanatics that would believe him regardless of what he says or what he does. Even when he tells them he will take their guns first, they ignore that because he's playing some kind of chess game with the people, and he's trying to trick the media. And so I get a man who has a cult following. And I get him and I put him into office, and I know that his cult following will be the right hand of the political spectrum. And I know that when I implement my COVID-19, when I start putting people out of work and everything else, I know that the right, the conservative element, will be sitting on their collective asses because they know that their hero is going to come riding in on a white steed and control everything and to fix everything. And just to help them with that thought, I'm going to run a little PSYOP program called QAnon. And I'm going to reinforce their beliefs that, hey, everything is just fine because he is in control. And he's playing games with the liberals. He's playing games with the media. And I did this, and I put him into that position to keep the conservatives sitting on their butts and doing nothing, because had I tried the same program with Hillary Clinton, the conservative people would have been in the streets and put a stop to it. Prove me wrong, guys.
John, answer to that, because I know you're on that wavelength or page.
I can't prove you wrong, Mike. I 100% agree with what you said. I can't. I mean, there's nothing to prove wrong. I can't do it.
So there's no other scenario, Dave?
Think
ahead.
about it. I mean, if this was 2014, we all hated Obama, right? He was part of the world order. Just like every other president beforehand. And so we're like, okay, but then they bring Trump out, and And let's say it was Ted Cruz. Let's say it wasn't Trump. If Ted Cruz was president right now, we all be hating him and think he was a deep state operative. You know, but they fooled people. They really fooled people because now they're people within the conspiracy. House divided cannot stand, and the truth movement is a house divided. I mean, trust me, there's a lot of operatives and paid people and everything. Don't get me wrong, but even amongst ourselves, we are a house divided, and that's the problem. Is they did bravo to the world order and their psychological operations, because this one was a doozy. And I don't know if people are ever going to come out of it, especially if, God forbid, something happens like Donald Trump is assassinated. They'll make him a martyr like they made JFK a martyr, and in Truth or Industrial Complex. You'll see that happen. And then, there'll be, people who believe in QAnon and MAGA people, forever. It'll never end. So we'll see.
Yeah, the way I look at it, people have to start doing
points
something.
that both of you made. I'm sorry, LB, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just stated that that's why people have to get up out their asses and do something and stop talking about it. Anyway, go ahead, Dave.
Well, those are some interesting points. And, I guess one other way to look at it is whether you like Trump or you hate him or you're indifferent about him, I think one thing that his candidacy has proved and his presidency has proved is that the president really doesn't have a whole lot to say about what goes on in terms of this agenda unfolding, whether Trump is a willing participant or not, or an actor or whatever. This thing is unfolded and it's just moving along without a whole lot of resistance. And we've seen, this kind of scenario at least since Woodrow Wilson, I'm sure long before that, but, Woodrow Wilson had, Colonel House, who was essentially his controller. And Wilson, essentially wouldn't go to the bathroom without consulting Edward House. So that's another perspective on this that's very similar, but maybe a slightly different take.
I thought for sure Clinton was going to get in, and I thought Trump was just maybe entertainment. I asked Mike this a while back in regard, maybe he covered it somewhat in what he just stated, but he said they needed a populist president to come in and get people involved. And of course, my research, and Mike's also said this, states that they need people to be voting, and this whole system, because it's unlawful, they breached Article 5 of the Constitution, and the way the 14th Amendment's set up, if they fall below 50%, I don't know why they're still, holding to that formula of majority rules, but I think that's really important to them, and I think that's why they're really they pulled out all the stops to get people to volunteer into the system by participating in elections, and that's what I see going on quite a bit. But yeah, it was kind of strange that Trump got in. I thought for sure Clinton was going to get in.
Well, LB, 2012, you had Obama running against Mitt Romney. And if you want to talk about two complete morons, we had it there. And as Judge Napolitano said, but he lost his show at Fox for saying so. In 2012, he said the only difference between Mitt Romney and Obama was skin pigmentation. And so then, but a great number of eligible voters stayed home. They did not participate in 2012. This scares the bejesus out of the system, because they know that once the people catch on and they catch on to their system, they will cease to participate in the system. And that worried them. So by 2016, they knew if they ran Jeb Bush against or anyone else, basically, who was a political well-known on the Republican side, and of course Trump was a Democrat, so it didn't make any difference. He just, all you got to do is change the letter after your name. So you had the you had to have a populist president come in. You had to have someone to reinvigorate the voters.
Mm-hmm.
You had someone to appeal to them because they had to come out with that. But they could not allow Hillary to win, because if she had, by this point in time, and John, your point is super well made. By this point in time, if this COVID thing had been happening under Hillary, the right-wing America would have been in the streets. They wouldn't be wearing masks. They wouldn't be doing this stuff. They would be out there protesting and actually taking charge of their country again. And another theory I would like to run by all of you and ask you this is, what do you think would happen if the American public couldn't watch television for a week?
Oh, we'd have massive meltdowns. A lot of people would probably lose their minds. I just wanted to touch upon something you said, Mike, that was really fascinating about participation in the system, because you're absolutely right. Once enough people stop participating in the system in terms of voting, et cetera, the system becomes inherently inappropriate and non-valid.
Yeah, we'll pick this up after station break. This is Dare to Think Out Loud. It's LB Bork. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
The future is uncertain, I know this. Death is inevitable, I know this. But one thing is certain, as free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion, and as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away.
Travels to Earth through the rainbow crystal bubbles from the furthest reaches of space and time, across the dimensions, through the elements, and in harmony with the colors of the universe. Through her mastery of abstract stream of consciousness malapropisms, she weaves a web of comic, satiric, cosmic conversation. Her subjects can range from Norman, the goose next door, to astrology and earth changes, and into the deep recesses of the soul matrix. She holds a wealth of knowledge on herbs, plants, and astrology. Join Mona and her guests on adventures of a feral hippie as she touches the earthly radio waves 5 days a week at 2 p.m. Monday to Friday on Studio B at Revolution Radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. I want to thank everybody for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the one place where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio.
All right, let's show them what we got now.
All right, thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
We're back. This is Dare to Think Out Loud. August 14th. Got my desktop back. I'm in control again. Anyway, thanks for joining us. We've been talking about chaotic things today and what's going on in the United States and possibly also the world. John had to leave. Thanks for being with us, John. He's a busy guy. I talk to him a couple times a week. I'm going to be on his program, I think next Thursday it is. And it'll be fun. We always talk about good things. But we still have Dave Scorpio and Mike Gaddy on, and I don't have much to say, but I give it a try. That's not true. I say too much sometimes. Anyway, yeah, we got another half hour. This is the fourth segment of this program. So we've been talking about voting and consent and things of that nature. Do you want to continue, Dave? Do you have any comments to carry on with what was being said?
Well, no, this is a very interesting discussion. I guess the only thing I'd add is I think we're being misdirected with this whole thing to look at the federal government as the savior. They're the ones causing all these problems, and I don't think that we're going to find any salvation from the federal government. I think our salvation will be in decentralization of power. That's what needs to happen, and that's where we need to look for a solution.
I'm on that page. Mike, what do you think? Well, I know you think that.
I couldn't agree more, guys. And see, one of the things that I think is very critical is that in 2005, with J. Paul Bremer, our head guy in Iraq, as we were bringing about free elections for the people in Iraq, we made a very poignant statement as a government. We said that, okay, Iraq, we're going to hold this election. And if at least 50% of your people do not show up to vote, it's an invalid election. So if we're claiming that for other countries, would we not have to accept that for our own? Although I don't think they would let it happen. I mean, if 10% of the people showed up, I promise you the federal government would continue using force in whatever means necessary. But
that's a good point. That's a good point. But why this formula of majority rules or majority wins?
Well, LB, you and I both know that is not according to our primary source document in this country, the Declaration of Independence. Our first organic document very simply states and very succinctly states that any just government, J-U-S-T, any just government, from which we get the word justice, any just government rules by consent of the governed. It did not say the consent of the majority. It said the consent of the governed. And in the Articles of Confederation, we had Article 13, which provided consent of the governed for each state. Any state in the union at that time could very easily say, if they came up with Obamacare, they could have said no. One state could have said no, and it's not good. It had to be for everyone. That is true consent of the governed. And
Right.
the Federalists kept trying from 1781 on, they kept trying to bring in their schemes and their all of their stuff that they wanted to perpetrate on the American public of the time. And unfortunately for them, unfortunately for us, a state would step up, sometimes one, sometimes two or three, and would say, no, I see through your scam. It's not going to happen. So they had to completely subvert the Articles of Confederation. They could not just amend them, they had to subvert them. And so that is why they were sent to Philadelphia in May of 1787. They were sent there with the specific orders to amend the Articles of Confederation, but they had a meeting, several of them, Madison, Washington, and several others had a meeting, Robert Morris. They had this meeting before the Constitution ever got away and decided at that meeting, without consulting with the other delegates from the other states, that the Articles of Confederation were going to be trashed. I don't know how in the world anyone in their right mind can say that that could be a valid document after that.
That's an excellent point. The consent of the governed over the consent of the majority. And I've seen many references to that over the years, but as you just referenced about the usurpation of the Articles of Confederation, I think they still had to overcome that, and that's why the 14th Amendment was put in place. As over in Iraq, as you mentioned, I've determined that this world communist program they have going on, so-called democracy, you hear all these people talking about, the liberal types talking about democracy. And, patriot types say, well, this isn't a democracy, it's a republic. I've heard that argument for a long time. And I'm looking for a case that I saw from North Carolina a while back. I'll see if I can find it. But they said in there that the individual doesn't even have to consent in this system. And that was based when they put the Constitution in place, I believe. So the 14th Amendment does a real job on the voting issue. And I think that's the essence of the New World Order, because the 14th, or not the 14th Amendment, but the United States was basically the first state system they put in place that was kind of coming out of the rule of the sovereigns back in the 1700s. As kings were sovereigns. This is a whole new idea, this New World Order. And it's got to be by the consent of people instead of the rule of the sovereign. So it's interesting, though, that they seem to want over half the population agreeing to who's elected, or matters of what you related in regards to their legislation of the states, which are sovereign entities, supposedly.
Well, LB, I've been listening to the people for decades now with exactly what you mentioned a minute ago. I have heard people say over and over again, people will say, well, we've got a democracy. Well, there's a certain group of people will say, no, we don't. We don't have a democracy. What we have is a republic. Well, I'll tell you what, folks, I can call my car an airplane. It still won't fly. You do not have a republic. You may say you have a republic, but the government will tell you, no, you have a democracy. And the majority rules. And see, that was one of the things that, you look at it, we talk about democracies, but these people we called our founders. John Adams said there never was a democracy that didn't commit suicide. Thomas Jefferson said a democracy is mob rule, which we're experiencing now. And then, of course, Benjamin Franklin said a democracy is two wolves and a chicken deciding what's for dinner. And so I used to bring this up to my, when I was teaching young people, high school age and college age, when I was teaching them, in my government study, I would say, okay, guys, what kind of government do we live under? And they would say, oh, democracy. And I would say, okay, everybody raise your hand who believes that we live in a democracy. And they would raise their hand. Well, I didn't do this at the high school level, but I did it at the college level. I would have already counted the number of students there, and I would see who was in majority, the males or the females. And so I would ask the simple question, okay, we live in a democracy and that is the majority rules, right? And they'd say, yeah. And I'd say, okay, well, in my classroom today, I've got 15 men and 13 women. What if the men vote that they can rape the women anytime they want to? That is a democracy. That is majority rules. Are you girls all right with that? And it was, not surprisingly, no one was okay with that. And at least if you can get people to start thinking about this, almost every politician in Washington, D.C. today would tell you we have a democracy. And of course, they'll be, as you well know, probably more than most folks, is that Marx said a democracy is the first step to communism.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and under democracy, anything's possible. If the majority want communism, then so be it. H.L. Mencken commented years ago that if a politician found that he had cannibals among his constituents, he would promise them missionaries for dinner.
Oh, Mencken was wonderful. Mencken was just absolutely fantastic. What a guy who had a grasp. Dave, I remember the story one time, some vote was taken somewhere, and he was a journalist in Maryland, and he actually went outside and climbed the flagpole and cut out a star off the flag because he said Maryland no longer belonged in the Union.
Weren't they the biggest slave importers?
No, Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
Slave importers. Yeah.
Right. Sorry.
But Mencken was just an absolute genius. He said he gave the best definition of an election that I've ever heard. He said it was an advanced auction of stolen goods. So the whole democracy thing, Alexis de Tocqueville, I think it's chapter 10, if I'm not mistaken, on de Tocqueville's book, and his chapter is The Tyranny of the Majority. And folks, you ought to read that because what's going to happen in today's world. We've got a bunch of educated idiots out here who will do anything that they're told to do. If we had an election today that they would decide that all of the people who have nothing could take everything that belongs to the people who work for it, and the majority said yes, everybody okay with that? And I believe they have a majority now that's so damn stupid they'd vote for anything.
Yes.
Well, I think we've had two generations of Americans that have been conditioned through the public school system to look to government for solutions to pretty much every social problem that exists. And we're seeing the fruition of that right now in the streets of America.
Well, Dave, look at any election. Go to any election at any level, usually, especially on the national level. Go listen to any discussion or any debate. I don't care what party they are. They don't mention the Constitution. They don't mention the Bill of Rights. What they talk about is what I can give you if I'm elected, what I will provide for you if I'm elected. We have established this system on our own. We have people believing this because that's the very basis of campaigns. We don't have anyone stand up and say, well, what I'm going to do when I'm elected is I'm going to follow my oath and I'm going to enforce this Constitution to the letter. When's the last time a candidate said that? They're not going to say that.
Not my lifetime.
Because what they're out there doing is promising people stuff that they know they can't provide, but the people believe that government is government's in charge of me from the cradle to the grave. It's my provider. They'll take care of everything.
Well, and Mike, that's one thing that I find fascinating and thought-provoking about your research is that in many ways we've been sold a false bill of goods right from the very start about what the role of government should be and what constitutes the power of government.
Well, Dave, the thing, and I've brought this up and I've written articles about this, everybody is upset at the South about slavery. Oh, yeah. Well, the South, we got to tear down these monuments. Let's change the names of streets. Let's do all of this stuff because of these crazy Southerners. People, the vote in the Constitution of 1787 embraced and codified slavery. Slavery was a part of the very beginning under the new Constitution. They put it in there, but they didn't want to use the word slavery, so they said a people sold to service. They didn't even want to use the word slavery, but they embraced it. And if everyone can say, well, it was those Southerners, I've heard this over and over and over, it was those Southern states that insisted on it. Okay, well, all right. The Southern states were outnumbered 8-5. So if the North had to go along with it, and one of the reasons the North went along with it is because Rhode Island was the largest shipper of slaves of any of the states, and several states fell behind because the shipping industry in America was centered in New England, wasn't centered in the South. The slaves came in from the shippers in the North. And so they profited from it. What difference does it make today? We talk about drug dealers and we'll say, okay, somebody who uses drugs, they need all kind of rehabilitation. They need all this kind of help, but we need to get rid of the people who sell drugs. Well, let's take that concept of slavery. Why didn't we go after the people who went to Africa and brought slaves back? Why don't we go after them instead of blaming the people who used slaves?
Yes. That's a good point. And the people that own the ships that brought the slaves to the country as well, of course. They're the smugglers.
Exactly. Look at what we have today. Brown University, one of the Ivy League schools, was founded by a man who made his fortune running slave ships. Aetna Insurance was established originally to insure those shipments of slaves. Does anybody want to tear down the Aetna building anywhere? Or does anybody want to do away with Brown University? No, they don't. Timothy Dwight was a big guy, about abolition. I was researching abolitionists the other day, and I found an abolitionist preacher who was one of the strongest people who preached against slavery, and he owned slaves. And people said, well, he freed his slave. Well, yes, he did. He freed his slave. He got a slave when he was 10 years old. He freed him when he got older, and then he hired him and his wife for $20 a year was their salary, and their 4-year-old son was then in slavery until he reached the age of 22. That's an abolitionist for you. Not only that, but he was a preacher too, so that makes it even better. People are ignorant of their history, and they're being strangled to death with their ignorance.
Yes. I've been looking at what you brought up a few weeks ago in a program we did about, the United States or the federal government causing these problems. And slavery caused, of course, a lot of chaos. And I've noticed, something in the 14th Amendment, which was odd to me. Of course, I figured it out a long time ago, but they put the word male in Section 2 of the 14th Amendment. And that was to instigate the problem of women not being involved in politics. And it was the right to vote thing that came first. Eventually, the women got involved in politics. And it gets back to that democracy thing. So these people have been instigating and controlling people for over 200 years. Everyone thinks they're free in America, but no, they're manipulated and controlled.
Well, totally. Ironically, LB, going by what you said there, I asked someone the other day, I said, well, black males in America were allowed to vote for 53 years before white women were allowed to vote. Do the black males owe white women reparations?
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting point, Mike. And I guess how far back in history are we going to go to start making reparations? I mean, you
Right.
could go back a long way. There's a lot of bad things that happened throughout history. And I don't think the role of history is supposed to be to make sure that you don't offend anybody.
Well, guys, King James of Great Britain brought the first slaves to this country. He brought 300 of them, and I forgot exactly the year, but he brought 300 slaves to the country, and that started the institution of slavery in the colonies. Those 300 slaves were white, and they were Irish because they were causing him problems, and he wanted to do something with them, so he rounded up 300, and the others he killed or starved to death, but he rounded up 300 and brought them to America and sold them as slaves. So can I now ask for, because I'm of the Irish descent, can I now ask Britain to pay reparations for my ancestors because I may have had one who was a slave? And the other point about this crazy thing about reparations is a great majority of the people in this country, their families immigrated to America after 1865. So why do they owe anybody anything for reparations?
Well, yeah, and then how are you going to determine who is black exactly, too? Are you going to give people genetic tests, DNA tests, and what's the the minimum percentage of African genetics you have to have in order to get reparations? The whole thing is ludicrous.
Well, Kamala Harris may be black only because she had sex with Willie Brown.
Let's don't go there now.
Well, she's not
No,
black.
I'm just, I'm just kidding. We can go there. It's
she's
Dare to
not
Think
black.
Out Loud.
She came from a family that owned slaves, incidentally, in Jamaica. So
Yes,
there you go.
of course. And hey, guys, now that we've mentioned Jamaica, and I wanted to talk, does anybody know what Jamaica's flag is patterned after?
No.
Look at the Jamaican flag. The Jamaican flag is the Confederate battle flag in different colors.
Hmm.
Oh, interesting.
And Jamaica is 94% black. So, gosh, is that a racist flag? And when they adopted that flag, and it's green, black, and yellow, I think, but it's still the St. Andrew's cross. And and it doesn't have the stars in the cross, but it is the St. Andrew's cross. And when it was adopted, they said that their flag was they adopted that flag because it was a sign of resistance to tyranny. My goodness, didn't the South say the same thing about the North?
Yeah.
Plus, in America, we salute and pledge allegiance to a flag that flew over slavery for 89 years, and we call one that flew over slavery for 4 years racist. Where is the common sense, people?
Well, that went out with the common law.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
Been under
point,
statutory dictatorship since the Civil War, for the most part. People don't understand that. I've said for a long time, people are born in the box. They don't know. They can hear their dad's and their grandfather's story, but they haven't lived it. All the children 20 years old today have lived through what happened since 9/11. That's all they know,
Well, LB, I have a question. I asked this of a group that I'm involved in. I asked this question when we were discussing the 14th Amendment. And I said, okay, well, let me ask you the question. If the Constitution works as it was ratified, if our Constitution actually works, why do we have an amendment that wasn't ratified? And why can the courts make a decision on an amendment that wasn't ratified according to the Constitution? So your Constitution's worthless if it can't prevent that.
Good point. Well, we got about 2 minutes left. Let's end it with maybe some promotions for both your shows, gentlemen.
Jump on it, Dave.
Okay, well, my show comes on from 1 to 4 p.m. on Saturdays, Studio A, Scorpio Conspiracy Show.
It's not Conspiracy Theory Show?
It's no longer a theory.
Okay.
It turns out it's no longer a theory.
I was joking. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, my program, and I have probably the best producer going, some guy by the name of Scorpio Dave, or Dave Scorpio. I'm on Sunday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, and the title of the show is Addicted to Our Own Destruction, which I think is we are today proving we are strangling ourselves to death with those things that we embrace and are afraid to let go of. And that's basically the wonderful government.
That's it.
And
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say, excellent title. By the way, folks, Mike came up with the title for this program. Anyway, finish.
Yeah, LB said, come up with a title for a program. You've got 3 seconds.
It's about what it took, too. I was impressed. And we went with it, no questions. I work with people. I love working with people that have their own insights and, not opinions, but thoughts. It's unfortunate that a lot of people don't think, and they surely can't think out loud. Anyway, have a good weekend, folks. We'll be back next week. Take care.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, LB. Thanks, John.
All right. Good talking to you guys. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to